right, so let's talk about 1.1, which is called rise over run. We are going to have some moments where some of that stuff I just talked about will overlap, but we should be okay if we talk about those again. So the first definition that we need to talk about is a ratio. Okay, so we're going to calculate ratios and solve for unknown values in proportions. And we need to know what the difference between a ratio and a proportion are. Okay, so a ratio is a comparison between two numbers measured in the same units. For example, if an engine runs on a mixture of gas and oil and needs 15 liters of gas for every 1 liter of oil, the ratio of gas to oil is 15 to 1. It can also be written as 15 to 1 with a colon in the middle, or 15 over 1 as a fraction. A proportion is a statement of equality between two ratios. For example, if an engine twice the size of the one above needs the same mixture of gas and oil, it will need 30 liters of gas for 2 liters of oil. The ratio of gas to oil is still the same, and the following proportion shows this equality. Okay, so a proportion is just a statement of equality between two ratios. So 15 to 1 is actually equal to 30 over 2. Because if you can decrease 30 over 2 or reduce it to 15 over 1. Same thing would happen if you multiplied it by 3, 4, or 5. All right, so let's talk about example number 1. So a recipe for vegetarian chili contains 56 ounces of chopped tomatoes, 30 ounces of kidney beans, 15 ounces of whole kernel corn. A is asking what is the ratio of corn to kidney beans, and B is asking what is the ratio of tomatoes to kidney beans. So for A, we just take exactly what we see. So for A, we want corn and kidney beans. Okay, we have corn here and kidney beans here, which means we have 15 and 30 that we have to deal with. Okay, so the ratio can actually be written as starting with the words itself, corn, and then your colon, and kidney beans. Okay, so because of the way that the question is asking, corn is coming first, kidney beans is coming second, so we just automatically apply that same order. Okay, so corn was 15, you can see goes first, and then 30 is second. 15 and 30 are both divisible by 5 and 3. So and 15, sorry. We are going to decrease this or reduce this by 15 on both sides. It's really important that this gets reduced, so make sure you don't forget to do that. Notice that if you have problems with figuring out what number to decrease by, so you can write out their factors. So you can do 1 times 15. There's nothing that you can multiply by 2 to get 15, and then there's 3 by 5. Okay, so those are the only two factor groups. And then if you're talking about 30, you have 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and then 5 times 6. With that, you take their greatest common factor, or GCF, if you guys know what that means. Basically, just the highest number that you can divide both numbers by. So you go through the list. Nothing makes 15 multiplying it by 30, so it can't be 30. And then 15 would be the matching one in these lists. So we would divide by 15 in both cases. Sometimes it's more obvious than others, especially when you're dealing with a little bit smaller numbers. So divide 15 by 15 is 1, and 30 divided by 15 is 2. So the ratio of corn to kidney beans is 1 to 2. Okay, going to B, using that same format with tomatoes. There are 56 ounces of tomatoes and 30 ounces of kidney beans. Again, tomatoes come first, so tomatoes are going to go first in the ratio, and kidney beans come second, so they will be second. So you start with, right from the question, 56 to 30. If you wanted to write all of their factors out again, you could. but we know for sure they're divisible by 2. So divide by 2 both sides, figure out what your numbers are, and see if you have to decrease them anymore. 2 is the greatest common factor between those two numbers. So we have 28 to 15 as the ratio there. And that is answering that question. So let's pop down to the next and we will practice with one. All right, let's try number 1. So in this question, water does come first and juice comes second in the original statement. But the question is asking concentrate to, this becomes a colon, and water. Okay, so we're going to keep that in the same format. So I'm going to put concentrate to water, and we are going to plug in those values. So the concentrate was 250, and the water was 750. Now, their highest common factor is going to be 250 because 250 times 3 is going to give us 750. So we're going to start by dividing both sides by 250 to get the lowest possible ratio here. Okay, so we have 250 divided by 250 is 1, and then our colon, and 750 divided by 250 is 3. Okay, so your answer is going to be 1 to 3. It can't be reduced any further, so we stop there. All right, next question. To mix a certain shade of green paint, a painter mixes 2.3 liters of blue paint with 1.7 of yellow paint. What is the ratio of blue to yellow? Okay, so let's start with blue to yellow. And it says to express it as a fraction. We can change it at the end, or we can do it at the beginning. It's totally up to you which way you decide to go with. I'm going to start with the ratio. I'm also going to do it on the right side with the fraction. All right, so blue is 2.3. Yellow is 1.7. And with this, we don't want to leave these as decimals. Even when we take them into fractions, we would rather have these be whole numbers. And so you can notice that there is 1 decimal in each situation, and we are going to multiply each side by 10 in order to get rid of those decimals. So I'm just going to do that to get 23 to 17. And the factors of 17 are 1 and 17, and 23's factors are 1 and 23. So those are prime. Both of them are prime. We're going to leave it as is. It is reduced. Now, if we want to write it again as a fraction, the same thing is going to occur. We're going to set this equal to 2.3 over 1.7. We're still going to have to multiply both sides by 10 to get 23 over 17. And this would be our answer because it asked for a fraction. All right, let's move on to the next question. A cereal mixture contains 6 cups of oats, 2 cups of almonds, 1 cup of raisins, and 3/4 cup of coconut. Okay, what is the ratio of oats to raisins? Okay, so oats to raisins, remember that word to becomes a colon. All of these are in whole cups except for this one, which we'll talk about in a second. So oats are 6, raisins are 1, and that's it, because that is reduced. We can't reduce that anymore. All right, what about the ratio of almonds to coconut? Now we have the situation in which we have to talk about, which I mentioned earlier. So almonds to coconut. Almonds have 2, coconut has 3/4. Now, with that, we can do one of two things, actually. You can move this 3/4 into a decimal and deal with it that way, or we can get rid of, hopefully we understand this already, dividing by 4 is the situation here. With the denominator being 4, we're actually dividing by 4. The opposite of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4. So if we wanted to get rid of this fraction, we just have to do the opposite of divide by 4 on both sides, which is to multiply by 4. So I'm just going to do this way. We can see that clearly. So this and this are going to create a 1, because if you multiply something by 4 and also divide at the same time by 4, those actually cancel each other out. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so it doesn't change the formula. All you have to do is kind of get rid of those 4's. And then you're just left with the 8/3. Now, an alternative option would be to put it in that decimal form. So we can start with our 2, put this into 0.75, and then we have to multiply by 100 to make this work, right? So then we'd be 200 to 75. And then what? We're going to have a huge decrease that we have to work out, or a reduction that we have to work out. Okay, so in this situation, we're going to end up dividing by 15 because of the actual answer. Okay, so this was kind of like a hint. I did the easier way first. Okay, so either way, you're going to get this. Obviously, I prefer if you guys do it this way. This just creates a whole nother step. So we like efficiency. We want to keep you doing the easiest, most efficient way of doing this work. All right, so what is the ratio of oats to total ingredients in the recipe? So we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what's the total amount. And remember that their total is just adding up oats plus almonds plus raisins and then coconut. Okay, so oats are 6, almonds are 2, raisins are 1, and then we have our 3/4 at the end there. So to me, it makes the most sense. You just add up all your whole numbers, which are 6 plus 2 plus 1 is 9, and then you leave your 3/4 at the end. Hopefully we have some Harry Potter fans in there. All right, so the oats to total now is what we want. Okay, so oats to total. Oats are 6. Total is 9 3/4. Now, best thing to do in this situation is to sort of put this into a improper fraction. And if you remember how to do that, I'm just going to do this on the side here. You take your denominator, you multiply it by the whole number, and then add the last, moving this way in a clockwise fashion. So 9 times 4 is 36, plus 3 is going to give us 39, and then you just apply this denominator again. Okay, so I'm going to leave that like this and apply our option from before where we multiplied by 4 to get rid of that fraction altogether. So we're going to do that, multiply by 4. Again, we're doing that because it's an opposite operation to dividing by 4. So I'm going to cross these out, and we're going to be left with 24 to 39. This is not decreased or reduced. 39 has a factor of 3, and so does 24. So we're going to divide both sides by 3 to reduce this fully. And we're going to be left with 8 to 11. Sorry, 13. All right, moving on. Example number 2 says a big screen TV has an aspect ratio of 16 to 9, which means for every 16 inches of width, the TV is 9 inches high. What is the height of a TV that is 40 inches wide? All right, so the best thing to do with this, immediately as soon as you see a ratio, you want to apply that ratio immediately to your answer. So you start with that fraction as a fraction, and then you set it equal to what you know to be this. Okay, so what I like to explain it as is with proportions, we know that 16 inches is width. Okay, so I'm going to assume now that width is going to always be on the top of these fractions, which means anything that's left is on the bottom. So that's height. Okay, in the question itself, it's asking what height is. When we don't know something in math, we apply a variable, which is an awesome situation. So we can see where that's coming from. And we also know that the width of the TV is 40. So when we are looking at questions like this, we want to look for the 3 things that we are given. 2 of the things are given in the ratio, and then usually 1 other thing is given. Okay, so it's saying that the ratio is always 16 to 9, which is what you start with, which is what I was talking about before. And then if you apply what you know from the question, we know that 16 inches is the width. So then when we apply this part, we know that that width has to be on the other side of the equal sign, but also on the top because width is on the top and height is on the bottom. Now, I want you to understand a little bit more about those opposite operations that we were talking about before. They're trying to do the same thing in this situation in which we have an x on the bottom on the left side, and we have a 9 on the bottom, or the denominator, on the right side of the equation. So what they do is they're multiplying by a common factor, which on both sides is an x on one side and a 9 on the other. So you can see the process of this is this. They want to be left with something that's not a fraction. Okay, so there's 2 actual ways to do this. I don't prefer this way, but I like to teach students about this so that they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. All right, so you can see the x on the left side was a division of x. Multiplication of x is going to cancel that situation out. And then on the right side, you can see that the 9 is being divided, 16 is being divided by 9. The opposite of dividing by 9 is multiplying by 9, and those cancel out as well. What you're left with is 9 times 40 on the left side and 16x on the right side. Anytime that we are dealing with math in these specific situations, we always deal with the opposites. So in this situation, on the right side of the equation, you can see that 16x exists here. Well, 16x is actually 16 times x. What's the opposite of multiplying by 16? Dividing by 16. So again, with the balancing situation of equations, we need to be able to apply that to both sides of the equal sign. And we divide by 16 both sides, which is why we just get this single x here and the value of the height, which they made a mistake here. Right? So that is your answer. I guess with this, make sure you do your bed mass first. You would do the top portion and then divide. All right, let's move on to some examples. All right, a dirt bike requires 15 liters of gas to be mixed with 4 liters of oil. So immediately This is pinging alarms in my head saying, here's your ratio, write it down. Okay, so gas is first, oil is second. Okay, so this is the formula that we need. 15 liters goes on top, but we're not going to put liters. We can just leave it like that. And 4 liters of oil, and then we set it equal to, we're looking for 20 liters of gas, which would be at the top, right? Because gas is on the top. And how much oil do you need? Something we don't know. We put an X. Okay, I'm going to show you the alternative way of solving equations or proportions like this. The easier way to understand it, now that you've went through this previous example and understood the process of using opposite operations, is to just simply cross multiply. Okay, so I draw these little arrows just to remind yourselves that you are doing cross multiplication. So I'm going to draw with a different color here so you can see as well. I'm going to start with this. 15 times x is 15x. 4 times 20 is 80. And then we're dealing with the opposite operation again. Remember that this is actually a multiplication of 15, so we want to do the opposite to get that x by itself. Divide by 15 then, and on both sides, these will cancel out, leaving you with x is equal to roughly 5.3 liters. And this is of oil. We need to make sure that we're really clear with our answer there, because I could get very confused if you don't know if it's oil, if you're making mistakes in your calculations, that sort of thing. I need to know your comprehension of the question as well. So make sure you put the right units and answer the actual question. All right, the next question. Almost there, you guys. Good job. If 10 centimeters on a map represents 25 kilometers, okay, actual 10 centimeters on the map. Okay, so right away, I'm starting with map on the top, actual on the bottom, and this is how I'll set up my proportions. So we have map is 10 centimeters. Actually, don't need the centimeters right now. Over 25. And we're going to set it equal to, and you can see how many centimeters, which would be on the map. We'll put an X where that is. And 45 kilometers on the actual ground. Okay, again, we're going to cross multiply. Easiest method and most efficient way, if you understand. Okay, 25 times x is 25x. Equals to 10 times 45, which is 450. Divide by what's in front of the x, both sides. X is then equal to 18 centimeters on the map. Awesome. Next question. A recipe for corn chowder includes 3 cups of corn, 2 cups of water, and 1.5 cups of cream. If you increase the yield of this recipe and use 4.5 cups of cream, how much corn will you need? All right, so a little bit different of a question, but let's just break this down. All right, so first of all, we're talking about corn and we're talking about cream. So that means we need to deal with this and this, because these two, those are the 4 things we need, right? So the first situation is what we know we have to have for a ratio. So with corn and cream, you can see we have 3 to 1.5. Okay, so I'm going to start with corn on the top and cream on the bottom. Just like before, this is what we're going to start with. Corn has 3 cups. Cream has 1.5. We can leave that as a decimal for now. And then we set it equal to, we know we're using 4.5 cups of cream. We're looking for corn, so we're going to put an X where corn is and put 4.5 on this side. And just like before, we're going to cross multiply. So we get 1.5x is equal to 4.5 times 3. And divide by 1.5. And we get x is equal to 9 cups of corn. All right, let's continue on. All right, getting back into the slope stuff. So the slope was actually a ratio of rise to run. So we can kind of use the same idea with proportions and apply those to slope. So let's get into the first example. Just jump right in because we've already talked about that stuff. All right, so the slope of a line has a rise of 12 and a run of 8. Well, we know that the formula is rise over run. We know that it has to be reduced fully. So rise is 12, that goes on the top. And we're dividing by the run, which is 8. 12 divided by 8 can't happen, so we need to just reduce. And we get m is equal to 3 over 2. Remember, slope does not have units because it is a ratio, not a measurement. It is a sort of a measurement, but it's for the sake of this, it's not. It's a ratio. All right. So let's go through some of these examples here. So number 7 says, calculate the slope in the following situations. We have a rise of 3 feet and a run of 18 feet for a wheelchair ramp. Remember, always starting with the formula is best practice. If you can get the formula down right, then you should be able to get everything else right. All right, plugging in the values that we know we have. 3 over 18, this is not reduced, so we're going to reduce by 3, both sides. We're going to end up with 1 over 6 or 0.17, just as another option, because it does help to have both situations. All right, next one says the snowboard jump rises 1.25 meters over 5 meters. Again, starting with your formula. (1.25 over 5). Okay, if you divide this in your calculator, you would get 1 over 4. But in this situation with a fraction, you would multiply by 100, get 125 on the top, over 500, and then if you wanted to divide that, or over 500, sorry, you would get 1 over 4 or 0.25. A roof rises 8 feet over a horizontal distance of 18 feet. Okay, again, m equals rise over run. 8 over 18. This is divisible by 2 on both sides because 18 can be divided. They're both even. So we get 4 over 9, or 0.44. A hill rises 10 meters over a distance of 8 meters. Start with your formula. 10 over 8 can be divided by 2, which gives us 5 over 4, or 1.25. Last one. A slide covers 3.5 meters of ground and is 2.4 meters tall. So we're talking about tall, the word tall. That usually means rising because it's going up. And then ground, remember, is horizontals. That would be your run. So they're trying to trick you here. Okay, this is simply, you can do two things. You can divide this in your calculator, or you can multiply by 10 to get 24 over 35. These do not have any common factors, so we're going to write that as 24 over 35, or 0.69. All right. Example number 4. The slope of a line is 7 over 20. What is the rise? What is the rise if the run is 100 meters? So now we have our proportion again. We have m, which these two things are the same in this situation. Okay, so slope is 7 over 20. And then it's still equal to rise over run. We don't have a rise, we have a run. So we plug in, either leave the word rise or put an X. And then we put in the 100 where rise is. And as I said before, this step that I started is not necessary every single time. I think it's better if we cross multiply. It's totally up to you which way you choose. Cross multiplying, you're going to get 20x is equal to 700. You're going to divide by 20, and you're going to end up with a rise of 35 meters. All right, let's test that out. Okay, so remember, always starting with what we know as the formula, rise over run. Except in this situation, we have an m value, and we have a rise of 400 and an x value for run. Okay, so let's plug in these values. 3 over 190 is your slope. Your rise is 400, and your run is going to be an x. And just like before, we're going to do a cross multiplication here. I'm just going to pop this up here. So that gives us 3x is equal to 190 times 400. And we're going to divide by 3 to cancel out that 3. X is then going to be equal to a very large number, 25,333 meters of horizontal distance. All right, let's try it if it's in a decimal form. Same thing applies. Rise is 210. X for the run. And we're going to cross multiply just like we just did, except in this situation it has nothing to multiply by. It's not going to change its value, so we're going to end up with 0.95x equals 210 divided by 0.95. And we're going to be left with x is equal to 221 centimeters of run. All right, one more example, and then we're going to have a couple more questions here. The slope of a street is 0.54. It covers a horizontal distance. Remember, horizontal is actually run. What is the rise? Okay, your slope is 0.54. Your rise is x. Your run is 28. And pretty simple in this one because it's just multiplying that and you get your value. So x is actually just equal to 15.1 meters of rise. All right, last example in the workbook, and then we have a couple afterwards. Harbinder is building a ramp in 2 sections, both with the same slope. If one section rises 2 and for a run of 6.5 meters, how much will it have to rise if the remaining run of 9.8? Okay, so we have the first section. We can use that slope in order to apply it to the other one. There's a couple of ways we can do this. Hopefully they show you both. Sort of. All right, so the solution here is to figure out what the slope is. So again, it's talking about the rise of 2. So the rise goes on top. 2 is on the top, and then 6.5 is going to be on the bottom. The slope of the second section is also 2 over 6.5. So we can set up a proportion to solve for x and find the rise of the second section. Okay, so again, we're starting with this one right here, setting it equal to, we know that rise is on top. We're looking for rise, so the x should be on the top. Remember, the run on the bottom. Okay, again, we can cross multiply and skip this second step altogether. Save you some writing, save some trees or battery, whichever one. All right, so we have these things canceling out here. We're going to end up with 9.8 times 2 divided by 6.5, which gives us 3.02 for the remaining section rise. All right, so let's do the last 3 examples here together, and then you guys will be on your own for your daily work. Leslie works for a shipping company. He regularly carries boxes up and down several stairs and has decided that it would be easier if he built a ramp. The stairs have a rise of 3.5 for a run of 6. What is the slope of the stairs? So we've already done this before. It's very, very easy. Set up your formula, rise over run, and put your rise on top and your run on the bottom. Okay, if you divide these, you're going to end up with 0.58. Or the fraction would be 7 over 12 if you decided to multiply these by 10 and then reduce. Oops. Number 12, Harry is building a staircase with a slope of 0.9. What is if the total rise of the staircase is 203 centimeters, what is the total run? M equals rise over run. M is 0.89 equals the rise over run. Cross multiply, you're going to end up just flipping these two values around because we're going to end up with x is equal to 203 divided by 0.89, sorry. And we are going to get an x value of 228 centimeters of run. Last example for real this time. All right, number 13. We have a slope of a slide is 2b, 17/10. What is the maximum, or if the maximum space is available for the slide is a horizontal distance of 1.5, how high can it be? Okay, remember height is going to be rise, and then horizontal distance is equal to run. Start with your formula, rise over run. The slope is 17/10. The rise is not known. The run is 1.5. We're going to cross multiply. We are going to get 10x is equal to 1.5 times 17, and then divided by 10. And we're going to get an x value of 2.55 meters of height. Awesome. Thanks for today, you guys. This is completed. I will get you your assignment ready for you, and I will talk to you in the next video.